Hey, Theodore. How's it going? What's this? Is that your friend? Yeah, that's Fred. Tell everybody how much you love Fred. Is this Fred? Okay, well, whenever you're ready. That's Fred. Why, hello there, endurance nerds. You're joining me for another disheveled post-workout video and another ridiculous t-shirt to talk about workout number 4 of Zwift Academy Road 2023, Fast Twitch HIIT. And yes, the name is very apropos for the intensity that you're about to partake in going into this workout. Now, I did the long variant of this workout, yes, after all my opining after workout number 3, but in this particular case, the workout was only 65 minutes, and I say only because I compare that to the 80 to 90 minutes for the long variants of all the other workouts. And I felt that an hour was appropriate for me to try to attempt, knowing that I would abide by a couple of rules and engage a couple of different strategies if needed to make sure that I wasn't pushing myself too far. So the 2 rules that I looked at for this workout, for me in particular, recovering from illness, which may be helpful for you, is that I was not to A, go over my lactate threshold heart rate, which for me is about 173 beats per minute, so I would use that as somewhat of a governor to manage my effort. And number 2 was to maintain control of my breathing, making sure that I wasn't becoming too uneven, asthmatic, too shallow, or having any type of obstruction that came by way of fluid, phlegm, disgustingness, all of that good stuff. So by abiding by those 2 different set points, I was able to manage the workout accordingly, and I was going to engage one of 3 strategies if needed. Number 1 was just to see how far I can get into the intervals. I knew what the intervals were for the shorter workout, and if I had to cut things off after I reached the shorter workout threshold, that was going to be just fine. But I felt like I had a little bit more, so I wanted to see how many intervals I could get done in each set. The second option was to just lower the bias. If things were just getting too intense, too early, or I couldn't keep up with the power, I was just going to turn that bias down accordingly. And number 3, which was actually the strategy I ended up using to modify this workout just slightly, was to be able to manipulate the recoveries just a little bit to make sure that I could do each interval as prescribed, or as close to it as possible. So where I ended up using that is as I got closer to the end of the first 2 sets, so interval 7 and 8 when I was in the first set, we'll talk about the structure here momentarily, and I think intervals 5 and 6 when I was in the second set, that I started to see my heart rate creep up, my breathing was starting to get a little on that edge. So what I did was I hit pause on the workout and I just extended my recoveries a few pedal strokes. It ended up amounting to about 5 to 8 seconds, and it gave me that little extra time to drop my heart rate a couple more beats per minute, to get a little bit more control of my breathing, get back on top of the gear, and I felt prepared to hit the next interval as prescribed from a power perspective. So yes, I cheated the recoveries just a touch, but at the end of the day, I got 99% of the intended benefit of this workout. And I share these with you because these are strategies that you can employ to make modifications to the workout if it's not quite the right day for you, especially that last one, because I think a lot of people will feel when they hit a recovery after a really tough interval and they have 2, 3, 4 more to go, they may feel right on that bubble like they just can't do another interval and they want to pull the plug. But you'd be surprised as what a couple of seconds can really do to mentality and getting your body reset so that you can hit the next interval. A few seconds isn't going to make that much of a difference. Sure, you want to move in a direction where you're doing the workout perfectly as prescribed, but I think adding a few extra seconds to the recovery is much better than pulling the plug and cutting out the sets or the entire workout short. But I'm overall pleased with my experience with this workout. It actually ended up giving me a bit of a confidence boost. While my heart rate is still about 8 beats per minute high, I'm definitely not recovering to zone 2 heart rate as I get into longer recoveries between the sets. I still feel like the RPE is manageable and the power is actually there. I just need to catch up my cardiovascular system coming back from an illness, which for many of you endurance animals out there, you know it's much easier to bring back the cardiovascular fitness than it is to bring back power once it's lost. So I'm feeling much better than I did after the past couple of workouts, a little bit less frustrated, and I feel like this was a good workout to get into the books and I'm moving in a positive direction. So let's talk a little bit more about the intended purpose of this workout. This type of workout, you'll see structures like this all over the place. There are many variations, but this is bread and butter type of work for those individuals who like to pursue criterium racing or fast racing on Zwift or cyclocross racing, that very high punchy type of power that you're going to have to execute over and over and be repeatable. A lot of those folks will see these types of workouts a lot in their program. In fact, many people will find this workout to be the easiest of the bunch. I use that term relatively speaking, but because of their phenotype and their relative strengths, they may find this easier than the other workouts. Many of you will find this to be the hardest, but for either one of the cohorts, this is a solid workout to do to either leverage your strengths or to work your weaknesses. Now, you'll see repeat workouts like this all over the internet and all over these different platforms, and you'll often hear them termed under umbrella known as Tabata. And basically what those types of sets are intended to do is to give you very high executions of power that are unsustainable. We'll talk about that more here in a second, with insufficient recovery in between. between. And you are basically working a couple of different things. You're working your repeatability, and you're going back and forth and hammering that system and seeing how often you can do that and repeat those efforts in a very crunched period of time. And you're also just building up that raw power at those different power zones. So in this particular workout, as you'll find in a lot of Tabata type of sets, you're working in both your anaerobic and your VO2 max zones. So VO2 max is a zone at which you are working at your body's maximal oxygen uptake in terms of the muscles. The muscles can only take on so much oxygen as fuel. So it's kind of right in the nomenclature, right? VO2 is an oxygen max. It's the maximum amount of oxygen that you can deliver. And when you're working in that zone, which for most people is between 105 and 120% of their FTP, again, like I mentioned before, there is a little bit of variation based on phenotype. Some folks can ride in their VO2 max up to even 140% of their FTP, but that meaty part of the bell curve is up to about 120%. And that's where you have a few things coalescing, right? You're working above your lactate threshold. So you are working at a point where lactate is starting to build up in the system faster than your body is able to clear it. So it's going to become a limiter for you as the muscles become more and more acidic. And obviously you are working very glycolytically and burning through those sugars awfully quickly. So you only have a finite period of time when you can work in that VO2 max zone. The next zone up is your anaerobic zone. You cannot deliver enough oxygen to the muscles in order to execute that type of power. Theoretically, you could hold your breath and do work in an anaerobic zone. I wouldn't recommend it. The body needs oxygen, but essentially you're not taking enough oxygen and delivering it to the muscles. So at that point, your muscles are going to shut down, not only because you're building up an excess amount of lactate in the system, but because there's just not enough oxygen for the muscles to continue to contract at that rate. So by doing repeats like this, you're able to enhance your capacity to work at those higher executions of power. And the reason that they're structured like this is because people naturally have that ability to do that anaerobic level sprint or do that high VO2 max output because, again, it's a survival mechanism, right? You could do it off the couch. If you had enough adrenaline in the system and it was a survival situation, you're going to be able to put a pretty high execution of power out there to get away from whatever threat is in the area. And if you're given a lot of recovery, you can probably do it again. So this is why you're not going to see a 30-second effort with a 2-3 minute long recovery, because it's just too much recovery to incite a change, because the body is going to be able to do those brief periods of effort pretty naturally. It's part of what we need to survive in the world. But you will see some variations out there, not specific to this workout, but you can work into these 1-to-1 ratios of 30-30s, 45-45s, and 60-60s that you'll see here. And you may see a 1-to-2 ratio. So you may see as an easier version of a workout like this, where you have 30 seconds of execution and 60 seconds of rest, another 30 seconds and 60 seconds, and so on and so forth. And then you may work yourself into a 1-to-1.5, where you do 30-45. Then you go into the 1-to-1, which is sort of the industry standard, so to speak. And if you really want to challenge yourself, you'll see some workout that go to a 2-to-1 ratio, where you might have 30 seconds of effort and 15 seconds of rest. So there's a number of ways to modify workouts like this as you progressively overload throughout your plan to make things more difficult and to be able to make sure that you're continuing to improve as an athlete. You can also see some of those variations right within this workout itself. As you move through the different sets here, you have the highest execution of actual power in the shortest intervals. And as you move into the second set, you have a longer interval, but the power is a little bit less. And then the last set, the power is less still with an even longer interval. So again, a number of different variations that can take you through the different zones and work different systems. There's a lot of flexibility with workouts like this. And even if you are not one of those people who is training to race, these are decent workouts to put into your plan once a week, once every 2 weeks, just to keep those higher power zones sharp and capable, because you'll never know when you need to use them. Now, in terms of the long versus the short workout is almost the long workout cut exactly in half. So you're getting the same overall design, you're just getting either the time crunch version or, hey, I'm a beginner to this type of work version. Either one of them is acceptable. I think you're still going to get a solid workout either way. In both the long and the short workout, you're going to have this ascending warm-up, just like a lot of the other workouts there. I kind of wish they had put a couple of priming sets, like maybe 2 30-second efforts, just to bring the system online. As I've talked a little bit about in the previous workouts, where I thought that the warm-ups are really well designed, I thought they might have left a couple of primers out here, but it wasn't that detrimental to the performance in the workout. Then you move into your first set here, which is 10 repetitions of 30 seconds on at a little north of 130% of your FTP. So you're definitely in your anaerobic zone for most riders out there. And then you're going to have 30 seconds of recovery at 60% of your FTP. So that's technically in your zone 2. You may start to find that recovery valley becomes a little bit more challenging as you move through these sets. If I were to design this workout with the meaty part of the bell curve of the intermediate riders in mind, I would probably make those recovery valleys just a little bit lower, maybe 50% of FTP or even 40% of FTP. Just give people a little more opportunity to get back on top of the gear. I understand what they're trying to do with the 60%, be a little bit more challenging, a little bit more unsustainable, but in terms of working your way into something like that, this could be a little bit tough. Granted, the variation between the two power executions can also be a little bit jarring. So doing a 60% versus a 40%, it takes away a little bit of the extreme between the working set and then the recovery. Now for the short workout, you're going to have the identical layout, but instead of 10 repetitions, you're going to have 5. Then you're going to have a solid recovery of about 10 minutes, and that's going to be again at 60% of your FTP at that zone 2. So plenty of time to get back on top of the gear, get in control of your breathing and your heart rate. For the shorter workout, you're going to have about 3 minutes. So you're not going to get quite half. So it's going to be a little bit more time crunch, but with a smaller amount of repetitions, it should still be sufficient for you to be able to recover. Then the second working set here you have is a little bit of a variation. Again, lowering the power and extending the interval a little bit. Now these are going to be 45-45s. 8 repetitions where 45 seconds on, you're going to be at about 120%, a little north of 120% of your FTP. So right on that bubble between your VO2 max and anaerobic zone for most people. And again, the same recovery of 60% of your FTP for the recovery intervals. Don't give yourself any illusions that this is going to feel any easier for you, because by the time you start to work that load in the system, you still have another 15 seconds left that you did not have in the first interval. And I think from an RPE standpoint, for most of you, it's not going to feel any easier. You may see the heart rate come down a little bit. I did. I noticed a few beats per minute less in the second set of intervals, but it was still pretty difficult to execute that power. For the short workout, identical intervals, but instead of 8, you're going to have 4. Then you're going to move into another recovery valley. For the long workout, it's going to be 10 minutes again at 60%. And for the shorter workout, it's going to be 3 minutes at 60% of your FTP. Then you're going to move into the last working set. These ones are going to be set up as 60 seconds on and 60 seconds off, with the 60-second working interval at your low VO2 max. So pretty close to that bubble between your zone 4 and your zone 5 at about 108% of your FTP. So you may feel like this one is a little bit more achievable for you, but now you're already going to have a good amount of fatigue baked into the system, and you're going to have to hold that power for about a minute. So you may start to feel this one pinch. You're going to have 4 of those in the long workout and 3 of those in the shorter workout. You're probably going to feel like you're just about done with this workout by the time you're moving through that set, but try to keep things under control, keep your form clean and crisp, and get through the remainder of the workout strong. Then you're going to have a brief cool down, just like some of the others from zone 2 down into your zone 1. Certainly might be one of those types of workouts that you want to extend with a little bit of easy spinning in your low zone 1 if it makes your legs feel a little bit better. Try to clear some of those metabolic byproducts that you build up in a workout like this, working above your VO2 max for a good portion of the workout, and recover as you see fit. Now I want to talk about a few things in terms of preparedness for this workout. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about fueling. In terms of this workout, this is one of those workouts where you could do it fasted. You would want to make sure that your glycogen was topped up. So if you're going to do this in the morning, make sure that you've definitely topped off your glycogen stores the night before with a solid meal. You can certainly do some depletion here in this workout, but please be sure from a recovery standpoint that you're refueling immediately thereafter. Because of the length of this workout in general, you can definitely get through without bringing in sugars during the workout or right before. Now from an optimization standpoint, it might help to maybe just grab a gel, maybe 20 to 30 grams of carbs to get through the hour, give you a little extra available sugar, but it's certainly not necessary. But again, that refueling component after the fact is important. You could also pre-fuel for this workout and not necessarily worry about the post-fueling strategy, but from a recovery standpoint, I actually think that the post-fueling strategy is the ideal one in this case. Cadence on this one is going to be exceptionally important. Start the beginning of those sets with somewhere to go, because you're already working anaerobically, especially in that first set. You're at anaerobic level power. You're already using those fast twitch muscles, grinding through at an ultra low cadence. It's going to make these exceptionally difficult for you. It's a practice skill to be able to go through a very high execution of power with a very low cadence. You may start to see an attrition in that cadence, but give yourself somewhere to go. Another thing to consider if you are using erg mode, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here, is that when you are finishing the interval, going from the working repetition to the rest, ride through the arch. Resist the urge to back completely off. You are just going to create mayhem for yourself. You're going to bog down your cadence at a very low power, and you're going to feel like you're not in control of your cadence or your power before you go go into the next rep, which is going to come on very fast. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, it is not a long time. It'll be gone before you know it. If you're just willing to ride through that arch by a few pedal strokes, let that brake come off, keep that cadence high, keep up the momentum and the high inertia in the flywheel on your trainer, it's going to feel a lot better for you, and you're going to recover a little bit better going into the next repetition. This workout in particular is one of those that many of you may prefer turn off erg mode. I would recommend it if you feel like you're fighting the trainer too much. There is a pretty severe delta between the working interval and the rest interval, and that can be very jarring on erg, especially if you're not used to it. And sometimes the transitions on Zwift are not the greatest. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay in terms of how the brake releases or executes, and if you don't want to deal with all of that noise, you can go ahead and turn off erg. What some people may struggle with erg turned off is that they don't necessarily know how to regulate their power well yet. It's a learned skill to be able to know where to shift and how to build up to that power, and because the intervals are so short, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and in a minute, you may feel like you're wasting a good portion of your time just trying to dial into the power that's being prescribed. If that's giving you way too much anxiety or too difficult for you, then just keep erg on. There's no wrong answer here. It's what's right for each individual rider. You also have the ability to toggle erg on and off. You have to be cognizant of your gearing so that you're not turning erg off and then you're in the absolute wrong gear for something like a recovery interval. But as you get more and more used to riding and leveraging the workout mode as a tool for you, you may find that this is a good strategy to employ. And lastly, be very conscious to not waste any energy. I just hinted at it a second ago, but I'll call it out explicitly here. Be in control of your form. Don't overgrip the handlebars. Don't lumber all over the bike, even if you have to get up out of the saddle to get through some of these intervals. Try to keep things controlled and don't use more muscles or more energy than you need to. These intervals themselves are already going to draw enough from the system, and if you're wasting any of that energy doing those non-productive things that we may not realize that we're doing, you could be taking away from your ability to execute the power for the intervals themselves. Sometimes it helps for people to have a mirror around or to film themselves because you don't necessarily realize, but sometimes if you just bring that prefrontal cortex online and do a quick checklist as you go down the body, as you're going through these intervals as something else to focus on rather than just staring at the timer. Hey, am I gripping the bars too hard? Am I all over the bike? What does my face look like? Okay, I got to loosen up the muscles in my face. You can go through those things and you can redirect that energy at the legs so that they can execute and get through each one of these intervals strong. But this is a solid workout, folks. This is one that you can come back to again and again and introduce into your training plan depending on your particular goals. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or you want to make fun of my t-shirt, my face, my hair, whatever it is, go ahead and do that in comments down below. YouTube-y stuff, please. It really does help the channel quite a bit. And I see a lot of new people joining Zwift, getting these videos out in front of those folks so it can help them to come and join the community and have a good time. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.